welcome back to my channel. Hello, my name's Amy and I like talking about random things, whether it's literature, movies, music, you name it. So if that interests you, then feel free to subscribe. Today I'm going to be discussing what I think is one of the best works of fiction of all time, and that is the story of Never Let Me Go. I highly recommend that you read the book or watch the movie before you continue if you don't want it to be spoiled. It's an amazing piece of literature and I highly recommend going away and enjoying it before watching this. But if you don't mind or you already know spoilers, then feel free to stay. Grab a cup of tea because this could take a while. So in case you're not familiar with the book or the film, I'll do a little overview. Never Let Me Go is a novel written by Kazuo Ishiguro, who is a talented author who moved from Japan to Britain in 1960. His writing in contemporary fiction holds him in high esteem with literary fans, and Never Let Me Go is one of his most well-known works. His works were so well loved that in 2017 Ishiguro won the Nobel Prize in Literature for his great writing and stories. He wrote Never Let Me Go in 2004 and published the novel in 2005, even having a film made that starred Carey Mulligan, Andrew Garfield, and Keira Knightley. The story follows three major protagonists, Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth. We follow the three as they go from the school of Hailsham to the cottages, and then into completion. They find out quite early on that their purpose on this earth is to donate their organs to cure others. Knowing this obviously has an impact on each, but they carry on and do what has to be done, which makes their bond as friends even more evident and a major part of the novel. In Ishiguro's work, you can see how each of these characters have a large effect not just on the story, but on each other. The plot is set in a dystopian world in the 1990s, following the lives of the three main characters, all being told from the perspective of Kathy H. To start off this deep dive, I need to talk about the character of Kathy H, since she is our main guide throughout the entire story. You are always seeing all of this happen through her eyes, and therefore will likely feel that connection with her that may be lacking with other characters. One thing I love about Kathy's character is that she's very self-aware and she always does the right thing. I remember reading the book and thinking of so many moments I thought she would snap or finally just say everything she was feeling, but she remained calm for most of it. She clearly cares a lot about the feelings of others and would never want to hurt her friends. Kathy's relationships in the story are what I think is the main element. We see her act two ways with two very different friends, Tommy and Ruth. With Ruth, Kathy always seems to be a little tense and watching out for her next move, but with Tommy she seems more open and happy. That being said, Kathy and Ruth's friendship is one built on confidence and unspoken secrecy, which is evident when they sneak into their rooms at the cottages and have late night talks and never share it with anyone else. So when eventually Ruth used one of these secrets against Kathy in an argument, you start to see a small fracture in the friendship. But true to Kathy's character, she always cared about Ruth, and even then would not retaliate in a cruel way because that's just not who she is. The reason she's so different when she's with Tommy, I think, is because the two are kindred spirits. They're not 100% alike, but it's their subtle differences that make them so comfortable around each other. Unlike Ruth, Tommy never dominates the friendship and is more of a kind reminder of Kathy's childhood. A childhood that was full of deception, but still important to her. This is clear because all of the story is her looking back at events that make her feel more safe and happy. Tommy is the living embodiment of when life was easier. He never lost his spark and doesn't mind letting his childish side slip out from time to time. Tommy D was arguably my favourite character when I read the novel because of how he seemed to be the calm amongst the storm, which contrasts his early behaviour in a big way. For me, Tommy is one of many elements that shows readers that these students are just as human as anyone else, even though they were created for donations. This is shown quite early on when we see Tommy lose control of his temper quite a lot, screaming and flinging his arms around angrily.
It's his own fault. If he learnt to keep his cool, they'd leave him alone.
This outlet of emotion shows how human he really is, and it's saddening to know that he'll never be seen the same as others outside of Hailsham. Ishiguro did a great job of using everyday things that were nostalgic to show how these characters were so similar to us. This form of relation could help the audience understand why the process is clearly immoral, and it makes for a bigger impact when Tommy is lost at the end of the novel. Relatable issues such as bullying, emotional issues, and love gossip in school were all things that most people will remember from their time at school. It's quite eerie how similar the themes from their life at Hailsham can relate to my own school life to a point where it's easy to forget what they're growing up to do in the novel. Tommy is one of the biggest representations of the injustice of the system because he shows his emotions at Hailsham, but then he learns to control it, and he becomes calm, but never lost his childish nature, which showed that he's still carrying Hailsham and his school life with him along this novel, making him the beacon of nostalgia. I can't talk about Tommy without talking about his relationships with Kathy and Ruth. Ruth seemed to be the type of love where you think you want it, but in reality you don't. I'm not saying Tommy didn't love Ruth, I'm sure he did, but it's always clear that it was meant to be Tommy and Kathy. Ruth wasn't exactly always kind to Tommy, snapping at him when he didn't catch on to things quickly. Tommy is so innocent at the cottages that he doesn't know when not to say something, and even when the other two glare at him, he still doesn't understand. But it's his innocence that makes the whole story so heartbreaking. He's so thoughtful and kind, and to know that he's going to have to give his organs away and lose his life eventually casts this constant sadness over the story as a whole. This sparks an interesting question about people and humanity itself. Even though the novel is dystopian, it definitely asks the question, would you conform to this type of behaviour? The immediate answer would be, no, I wouldn't, but it's easier said than done. If we were all living in a world where anything could be cured by creating people that are modelled off others and raising them to give their organs to us for health, would we stop it, or would we turn our backs? The book creates a moral dilemma for the reader because I don't think there's one clear answer. Tommy influenced my answer because after seeing the ups and downs of his character, I felt connected and thought I couldn't let anyone give up their organs for the rest of us and have that as their only purpose in life. But then again, I had a bias because I'd connected and grown with this character over time. I'm still wondering what I would do as an observer in that situation because there's so many moral questions that pop up whenever I'm reading this, and that's what makes it so compelling as a novel. Not only is Tommy an amazing character that represents holding on to childhood and the injustice of this dystopian world order, but the author writes these characters so humanly and so deeply that it questions the morals of society as a whole, which I think is really intriguing. Before I move on from Tommy, I have to mention Andrew Garfield's performance in the film adaptation, because it's honestly astounding and he embodies Tommy so well in every scene. Him and Charlie Rowe did a great job at developing and portraying this character on screen, bringing Tommy to life in that innocent but heartbreaking way. Moving on to the most interesting character in my opinion, Ruth C. Tommy is my favourite character from the novel, but when I watched the movie, I really liked Ruth. Don't get me wrong, I didn't agree with most of her actions, but as a character, I love her. I love how interesting she is and how she represents this dominance in the friend group. Ruth is shown to be a natural leader from the very beginning, running the secret guard and claiming to be a guardian's favourite. She's caring but also a little manipulative because she can shut people out immediately if they don't agree with her or do something that threatens her image. For example, she practically shunned Kathy from the secret guard just because Kathy found out she didn't really know how to play chess. The name Ruth means friend or associate, which I think is quite interesting because in her years at Hailsham, Ruth seemed to be friends with many people, but only confided in few that she trusted. Her character is cautious, a little irrational, but also very dependent on other people for joy. She always seemed to be in company with someone, even after Hailsham, which is why when part 3 of the novel rolls around, it's more shocking that Ruth is quite isolated at her centre, already on her 3rd donation. While Kathy represents loyalty and Tommy represents innocence, Ruth seems to represent friendship. Even though she isn't the best friend to most, she still values those connections, which is evident when Kathy becomes her carer years later. One insight the novel gave on Ruth was that she wasn't going to make it, even before us as readers knew what was going on as far as the donations were concerned. The sentence that ends chapter 6 is Kathy thinking, it's an object, like a brooch or a ring, and especially now Ruth has gone, it's become one of my most precious possessions. This is direct insight from Kathy at 31 as she's reminiscing on her Hailsham days. So from very early on, we know we're going to lose Ruth as a character, which may actually lessen the emotional connection that the reader may have to her. At that early stage, Ruth is growing up to be a headstrong and determined person, but in her childhood this comes through as selfish and a little mean. So when this sentence is dropped at the end of the chapter, I didn't feel sad. I felt like Kathy had clearly come to terms with the fact that she'd lost her friend, so I came to terms with it too. Another cause of having Kathy as the narrator for this entire story. You'll only ever see Ruth through her eyes, never seeing any glimpse into Ruth's mind unless she opens up to Kathy. Ruth is my favourite character, especially in the film because Keira Knightley portrayed Ruth with such an unspoken leadership that it was clear who this character was. She was a person who valued friendship, but would get lost in her own ideals of life, and put on a confident facade. Her copying movements from television shows with Tommy, wanting to fit in and be accepted, shows that even though she's a clear leader of her friend group, it means a lot to her to be liked.
You know what I mean? It's copied from that television show.
But it's no big deal, a lot of us do it.
What do you mean as Chrissy and Rod do it?
She's a deep character that I could literally talk about all day, but for now, let's move on to the themes found in the novel. There are multiple themes in the novel, so I'm just going to go through 4 of them, the themes of friendship, nostalgia, time, and identity. Starting with the key elements that build the story, the theme of friendship. The 3 key characters have a bond that is a little fractured, but nevertheless they find their way back to each other. Each person means something different to the other, but they would all be there for each other. Throughout the novel they're torn apart by differing paths, but pulled back together again when they realise how little time they may have left. Their friendship never ended just because they parted, which is the case with any true friends. The theme of friendship also ties into the theme of time. The 3 knowing that they have limited time left impacts on how they chose to spend that time. And in the final moments for both Ruth and Tommy, Kathy is there for them, and they all find their way back to each other. Their limited time and what they do with it shows how grateful all people are to have much more time than they did. And I'm sure people wanted Kathy and Tommy to fight against the system, but in the end, they accepted their fate and they learnt that there were no deferrals. This is why Tommy's breakdown is such a crucial moment. It's his last time of going back to his childhood and letting go of every single emotion he feels. Frustration, anger, fear, and love all at once. He wants to spend a few more years with Kathy, but he knows that's not possible. Seeing how he knows time is running out is heartbreaking, and the 2 don't have the expected happy ending. I feel like the ending was necessary because it just shows the seriousness of this dystopian system and definitely gets you thinking more as a reader. Having Kathy lose Tommy after all their efforts just shows how unbeatable this system is, and no matter who you are, you should always use your time to the fullest. The themes can be provided with morals for real life, even though it's a novel set in dystopian 90s, which is why I love it so much. It's a book that when you read it again, you'll probably find something new or gain a fresh perspective about something. The themes of nostalgia and identity are also crucial in the novel, since we get to see all of the characters grow from children to adults, seeing them discover the world and how they fit into it, forming their own identities and relationships. Nostalgia links to this point because it was those past experiences that made them into the people they are today, this being the most prominent in Tommy because he had to learn how to compose himself and grow up, even though it was clear he'd rather let his emotions out, which we don't obviously see him do until the climax of the novel. So, in conclusion, I think that all the elements, characters and themes are what make this story so special and critically acclaimed. I adore the novel and it's my favourite read so far this year, and if you've read it, I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments. I hope you enjoyed my first video on this channel. I'll be uploading new content every week, so stay tuned for that. Video requests are always welcome, by the way. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!